NASCAR sent two stock cars to Le Mans in 1976, a Dodge Charger and a Ford Torino, each tipping the scales at 3,800 pounds, running straight pipes with no mufflers, and producing engine noise so loud it shook the ground while French spectators cheered. Lap 2 destroyed the Charger's engine, and the Torino lasted 11 hours before its transmission gave out. By any competitive measure, this registered as a disaster, and yet those cars hit 200 miles per hour on the Mulsanne Straight while blowing past Porsches like they were standing still. Both machines failed catastrophically because of a fuel miscommunication that destroyed their engines, and this embarrassing result actually laid the groundwork for NASCAR's triumphant return to Le Mans nearly 5 decades later. This story goes places you won't expect. Understanding why two NASCAR stock cars ended up at Le Mans in 1976 requires knowing just how desperate the race organizers had become by that point. Brutality defined the early 1970s for endurance racing because the oil embargo devastated the automotive industry while manufacturers pulled out of motorsport left and right. Ferrari vanished from the grid, Alfa Romeo followed, and Matra departed too, which left the Automobile Club de l'Ouest staring at empty spots with no obvious way to fill them. That desperation led to something unprecedented. Bill France Sr. ran NASCAR with an iron fist and also owned Daytona International Speedway, and the ACO approached him with a proposal for an exchange of classes where European cars would race at Daytona's 24-hour event while American stock cars would race at Le Mans. NASCAR executive John Cooper recalled what happened next, explaining that ACO representatives attended the Daytona 24 hours early in 1976, and Bill France asked them directly why they didn't have a class for American cars. Create one if NASCAR sends some cars over, that was their response. That exact conversation led to the Grand International class, a category designed specifically for NASCAR machinery, with the ACO agreeing to cover transportation expenses. June 12th and 13th of 1976, the scheduled race dates fell just weeks before America's bicentennial celebration, and the ACO explicitly framed this invitation as honoring the Franco-American alliance dating back to Lafayette's assistance during the Revolutionary War. Racing Experiment barely describes it. This was diplomatic gesture dressed up as motorsport. The biggest stars stayed home because NASCAR didn't send Richard Petty or Benny Parsons to France. A Winston Cup event at Riverside conflicted with Le Mans, and top drivers had championship points to chase. Two privateer teams received invitations instead. Herschel McGriff would pilot an Olympia beer-sponsored Dodge Charger alongside his son Doug as owner-driver, while Junie Donlevy's Ford Torino would carry Richard Brooks, Dick Hutcherson, and a French driving instructor named Marcel Mignot behind the wheel. Dismissing them as second-tier nobodies would be a mistake. Credentials rivaling any road racer in America belonged to Herschel McGriff. 22 years old in 1950 when he won the Carrera Panamericana, one of the most dangerous road races ever held. His resume also stacked up 14 stock car victories at the challenging Riverside Road Course, plus multiple finishes at the 24 Hours of Daytona. McGriff himself later explained that his road racing background probably secured his team's selection. Putting it simply, quote, "I wasn't just a circle track guy." Even more relevant experience came with Dick Hutcherson, who finished third overall at the 1966 Le Mans, driving a Ford GT40 Mark II alongside Ronnie Bucknam. That third place came during Ford's historic 1-2-3 sweep over Ferrari, which meant Hutcherson knew exactly what Le Mans demanded. 22 poles and 14 wins between 1964 and 1968 filled out his NASCAR resume. Genuine road racing talent boarded the plane to France. Stark contrast defined these cars against typical Le Mans machinery. McGriff's Dodge Charger ran a 426 or 440 cubic inch wedge 5.8, and not the legendary Hemi, as McGriff himself clarified, with 7 liters of displacement sitting under that hood. Donlevy's Ford Torino carried a smaller 351 Cleveland 5V8 at about 5.75 liters. 3,800 pounds registered on the scales for both cars running 4-speed manual transmissions, which made them easily the heaviest machinery Le Mans had seen that decade, and nearly double the weight of some prototypes on the grid. Qualifying told a predictable story. Jean-Pierre Jabouille's pole-sitting Renault Alpine turned a lap in 3 minutes and 33 seconds. McGriff's Charger managed 4 minutes and 29.7 seconds for 47th position overall. 4:38 landed the Torino dead last in 54th position. nearly a full minute slower per lap around the 8.47-mile circuit. Those qualifying times didn't tell the whole story, though. Nobody expected the French reaction to these cars. Crowds gathered the moment those American machines rolled off the transporters. Les Deux Monstres, meaning the two monsters, became their nickname quickly, and the French meant it as affection rather than insult. Fascination gripped them. Richmond News leader sports writer Randy Hallman witnessed it firsthand and captured it perfectly, writing, quote, "From the moment they arrived in France, the hulking Detroit beasts created a stir. Fans flocked around the cars wherever they went. Indeed, they looked as out of place as if they'd been beamed down from some hovering starship." Race organizers paraded both cars through downtown Le Mans' main square with crowds pressing against them on both sides. And what Junie Don Levy witnessed left him stunned. Quote, "Everywhere we go, and I mean everywhere, there's a big crowd following us." British press coverage took a more skeptical tone, with Motorsport magazine calling the cars cumbersome and predicting they would prove too heavy, bulky, and unwieldy to be at home on a road circuit. French crowds paid no attention to British skepticism. Sound captivated everyone above all else. McGriff remembered it vividly, saying, quote, "All the little Porsches sound like bumblebees, and then we'd roll by with those big block V8s running straight pipes and no mufflers. It shook the ground, and people loved it. A big American V8 at full throttle transcends language barriers, and the French understood it immediately. Stock NASCAR machines. These weren't because Le Mans regulations required modifications. Additional taillights went on along with windshield wipers, multiple headlights for night running, and radio equipment. An unusual request during the pre-race driver meeting led to the most important addition. Prototype competitors piloting small, low-slung racing machines urgently requested exterior mirrors on the big American cars because they worried about getting run over. NASCAR cars sat so high and prototypes sat so low that American drivers might not spot them in time, and McGriff agreed to mirror installation. Drum brakes remained on the Torino in an era when advanced disc brake technology was standard at Le Mans, and even the Charger's Hurst-Earhart disc brakes raised questions for the demands of road racing. 3,800 pounds needing to slow from over 200 miles per hour repeatedly for 24 hours, those brakes were trouble waiting to happen. June 12th of 1976 brought race day with brutal conditions as temperatures climbed into the 90s. Bill France Sr. stood in attendance, while Bill France Jr. waved the starting flags at 4 p.m. Symbolism aligned perfectly, with France Sr. dropping the French tricolor to officially begin the 44th running of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And that's when everything fell apart. Lap 2 destroyed McGriff's Charger engine. Not lap 20, not lap 10, lap 2. First car out of the entire race. Catastrophic miscommunication about fuel octane ratings caused the disaster. American and European octane rating systems use different measurement methods, and McGriff heard the French fuel registered around 90 octane. 3 lower compression motors came from his engine builder based on that information, expecting 90 grade fuel. 82 or 83 turned out to be the real octane rating when properly converted, nowhere near the expected level. Racing historian Janos Wimpfen documented this in his book Time and Two Seats, writing, quote, "Due to a mistranslation about the differences between American and European octane ratings, the cars were supplied with low grade that damaged the engines. Practice sessions destroyed 2 engines already. Head gaskets went into the 3rd engine to lower compression even further, with hopes it would survive. Pistons couldn't handle fuel running essentially 20 octane points lower than NASCAR normally used, and McGriff's Charger earned a no-result classification because Le Mans requires minimum lap completion for official classification. 2 laps fell short. Donlevy's Ford Torino fared better, though better remains relative when discussing catastrophic mechanical failures. Greater tolerance for low-octane fuel came from the smaller 351 Cleveland engine compared to the big block Chrysler, and the car ran through the night lap after lap while steadily moving up as other competitors fell out. 104 laps in 34th position, that's where the Torino sat by hour 11. Transmission surrender came next. Predictability and, frankly, inevitability defined this failure. 22 gear changes per lap, that's what Le Mans demanded, while some NASCAR oval races never required that many shifts during an entire event. Daytona, Charlotte, and Talladega meant circles with left turns only where drivers might not touch the shifter for 100 laps. A 4-speed manual gearbox designed for oval racing was never meant to survive 24 hours of constant shifting on a technical road course packed with chicanes, hairpins, and multiple braking zones per lap. One detail stood out to everyone watching. Driver Richard Brooks spent his stints with a lit cigarette in his mouth. A cigarette lighter built into the horn button came standard in the car, and Brooks calmly used it while driving flat out through the French countryside. French pit crews had no idea what to make of this display of American cool. 11 hours of running demonstrated something worth remembering. NASCAR machinery could survive endurance racing with proper preparation. Proper preparation just wasn't what they had. Devastating straight-line speed from the NASCAR cars remained beyond argument. 3.7 miles of asphalt called the Mulsanne Straight serves as the ultimate test of top speed at Le Mans. 1976 offered no chicanes to slow cars down. McGriff reported his Charger exceeded 200 miles per hour down that straight, putting it in his words, quote, "blowing by those Porsches and all." 200 miles per hour from a 3,800-pound stock car using technology that European engineers considered primitive. What happened at the end of the straight created the problem. Brutal honesty came from McGriff, saying, quote, "When I got to the 90-degree corner at the end of a run, I couldn't make it stop." Straight-line speed was never the issue because American pushrod 5/8s produced power that European cars simply couldn't match without sophisticated overhead cam technology and high-revving engines. Worthless power if you couldn't slow down for the corners. Hopeless mismatch defined the Torino's drum brakes, and even the Charger's disc brakes struggled against physics when stopping 3,800 pounds from 200 miles per hour, corner after corner for 24 hours. Skeptics always pointed to this when dismissing American stock cars, because sure, they're fast in a straight line, but racing isn't drag racing when you have to turn and you have to stop. Massive disadvantage on those metrics. But here's the thing. 10 years earlier, Ford proved that an American pushrod V8 could absolutely win Le Mans, and they did it 4 times in a row. Understanding the 1976 NASCAR experiment requires going back to Ford's GT40 program. 1966 through 1969 saw Ford's GT40 dominate Le Mans using essentially a NASCAR-derived engine, the 427 FE side-oiler V8. The same basic architecture winning races on American ovals every weekend. Results speak without argument. 1966 brought Ford a historic 1-2-3 finish that finally beat Ferrari after years of humiliation, with Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon taking the win, Ken Miles and Denny Hume finishing second, and Dick Hutcherson earning third alongside Ronnie Bucknam, the same driver who would return in the 1976 Torino. All-American Le Mans victory happened only once in history, and 1967 delivered it. American drivers Dan Gurney and A.J. Foyt piloted an American chassis from Shelby American with an American engine and American Goodyear tires. Gurney celebrated by spraying champagne on the podium, inventing the tradition that's still practiced today. 1968 and 1969 brought more Ford wins with the Gulf Wire GT40s. 4 consecutive Le Mans victories, all powered by NASCAR-derived pushrod 5/8s. Bolting a NASCAR engine into the GT40 and calling it finished wasn't Ford's approach, because significant modifications were required to survive 24 hours instead of the 2 or 3 hours a stock car engine might endure in a typical race. Car and Driver reported that Ford engineers, quote, "re-engineered the company's winning 427 NASCAR 5/8 for use in the GT40. That meant making it reliable enough to survive 24 grueling hours instead of the 2 or 3 it normally endured in a stock car event. Aluminum cylinder heads replaced cast iron, dropping weight by 130 pounds. Dry sump oiling prevented oil starvation during high-speed cornering. Lower compression ratio at 10.5:1 improved endurance reliability. 6,200 RPM caps kept the engine safe, even though 7,400 remained briefly achievable. Le Mans float bowls designed specially for Holley carburetors prevented fuel sloshing during hard cornering. 485 horsepower at 6,400 RPM resulted from these changes, arriving 2,000 RPM below, where Ferrari's screaming 4-liter V12s reached peak power. Brilliance defined this approach, and lazy liters became its name. Ford's secret weapon perfectly illustrates the difference between American and European engineering philosophies. Ferrari's 4-liter dual overhead cam Phi-12 needed to rev past 8,000 RPM to generate 450 horsepower, which placed tremendous stress on every component. High RPM brings more valve float risk, more bearing wear, more heat, and more of everything that fails. Loafing along at 6,400 RPM while producing between 485 and 530 horsepower, depending on tune. That's what Ford's 7-liter pushrod V8 delivered. Massive displacement handled the heavy lifting, not engineering complexity. 1967 saw the Gurney and Foyt Ford Mark IV actually win the Index of Thermal Efficiency, an award normally reserved for small displacement economy cars that measured how efficiently engines converted fuel into forward motion. A 7-liter NASCAR-derived V8 winning an efficiency award at Le Mans. Motor Trend observed this contrast in 1966, writing, quote, "Whereas Ferrari built a 4-liter dual overhead camshaft hemi-chamber light alloy V12 to meet the Ford challenge, Ford chose to stay as close to stock as reasonably possible. The 427 cubic inch pushrod V8, with its forged 180-degree crankshaft and cast iron heads, is a standard production power plant. European engineering elegance versus American brute simplicity, and simplicity won in the endurance racing context." Dan Gurney described the engine as having, quote, "great user-friendly torque, not like a light flywheel engine, but smooth and strong like a regular street car, which made it easy to drive in a long-distance race." Easy to drive for 24 hours wins Le Mans. If Ford proved NASCAR-derived engines could dominate Le Mans, the obvious question becomes why actual NASCAR stock cars failed so badly a decade later. Preparation answers that question, or rather the complete lack of it. Years and millions of dollars went into adapting the 427 for the GT40 program, while the 1976 NASCAR teams had weeks and a shoestring budget. Purpose-built chassis designed for road racing with proper weight distribution and aerodynamics served the GT40, while stock cars were exactly what the name implies, modified production vehicles designed for oval racing. Disc brakes engineered for repeated high-speed stops came standard on the GT40, while the Torino carried drum brakes. Detuned and strengthened for reliability, that described the GT40's engine, while NASCAR engines ran on fuel nobody properly tested. Fatal by itself. That fuel miscommunication. Engines built expecting 90-octane meeting 82-octane fuel. Guarantees catastrophic failure. Bad luck didn't cause this, inadequate preparation did. Equal predictability defined the transmission situation. 22 gear changes per lap, multiplied by however many laps they hoped to complete in 24 hours, using a gearbox designed for races where shifting might never happen once. The math never worked. Preventable reasons killed both cars, and the ACO noticed. Honest regret carried through McGriff's reflection on the experience. His words, quote, "We didn't do a good job of representing the class, and maybe that's why it didn't run a second year. If we'd have run the whole race and finished, maybe it could have worked." After 1976, the Grand International class never returned to Le Mans, making the experiment a one-time affair. That wasn't the end of the story, though. Another attempt came from McGriff in 1982, this time driving a Chevrolet Camaro in the IMSA GTO class for Billy Hagan's Stratograph team. 393 cubic inches from a stroker small block produced approximately 600 horsepower. 7 hours of gearbox repair killed any chance at classified finish for his entry. But here's where it gets interesting. 17th overall and second in GTO class. That's where the sister car, driven by Hagan and Gene Felton, finished, just 4 laps behind the class-winning Porsche. Richard Brooks partnered with McGriff as teammate, the same driver from the 1976 Torino still smoking cigarettes behind the wheel. Approximately 19th overall would have been their ranking if their car completed enough laps for classification. Properly prepared American stock car-derived machinery could compete at Le Mans. Proof just took 6 more years. 30 years after the original attempt, 2006 brought completion of a meticulous recreation of McGriff's Olympia Charger by French-American enthusiast Christophe Schwartz. An original Richard Petty Enterprises customer chassis with FIA vintage racing certification formed the replica's foundation, and Dick Pearson, an original McGriff crew member, served as Schwartz's co-driver at the 2006 Le Mans Classic debut. Remarkable performance data came from Schwartz, who reported, quote, "While being outbraked and outcornered by the small single-seaters, I had to lift on the straightaways in order not to push them off the track. The 426 Hemi's 700-plus horsepower reverberates inside the cockpit louder than you can imagine. 50 years later, those American Phi 8s remain faster in a straight line than the vintage European machinery. Regular appearances at Le Mans Classic events since 2006 have featured both the Charger and Torino. 2014 brought ACO acknowledgement that the cars had, quote, become regulars and not lost their powers of seduction. French love for Les Deux Monstres never faded. Le Mans' centenary celebration in 2023 coincided with NASCAR's 75th anniversary, and Hendrick Motorsports entered a modified Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 in the Garage 56 experimental class, an invitation-only category reserved for machinery that doesn't fit existing classes but deserves grid placement. Every single failure mode from 1976 found solutions in the 2023 entry. Engine calibration specifically for available fuel eliminated low-octane damage concerns. Carbon discs featuring titanium bells replaced inadequate brakes. A 5-speed paddle-shift sequential transaxle removed 4-speed manual transmission fatigue from the equation. Weight dropped from 3,800 pounds to 2,960 pounds. Full Le Mans spec lighting and mirrors came standard from the start. Unprecedented driving lineup brought together Jimmy Johnson with his 7 NASCAR championships, Jenson Button with his 2009 Formula One World Championship, and Mike Rockenfeller with his 2 Le Mans wins. NASCAR spec power came from the 5.8-liter pushrod 5.8, while simulating Le Mans conditions for 30 hours on dynamometers before the race. 30 hours of testing just on the engine dyno. Qualifying placed the Camaro ahead of all GTE-class cars, and 39th overall became the final position after completing 285 laps. Hour 20 brought a gearbox issue requiring 1 hour and 21 minutes of repair, but the car crossed the finish line, something neither 1976 entry achieved. Button captured the experience perfectly, saying, quote, "When they start it up, it will blow everyone's mind. The sound of it, it is insane. It will rock your world." American V8s still shake the ground. Some things never change. Special recognition belongs to several names in this story. 1992 brought the death of Bill France Sr., the NASCAR founder who negotiated the original 1976 exchange and also co-founded IMSA in 1969, laying groundwork for American endurance racing. Born in 1927, Herschel McGriff won the Carrera Panamericana in 1950, raced at Le Mans in 1976 and 1982, and finally retired from NASCAR in 2002 at age 74. Age 90 in 2018, he became the oldest driver to compete in NASCAR when racing at Tucson Speedway. The Keokuk Comet earned that nickname before Dick Hutcherson passed in 2005. Third place at Le Mans in 1966 with the Ford GT40, then back again in 1976 with the Ford Torino. 2016 brought the passing of Junie Donlavey, legendary NASCAR team owner who fielded the Torino. Beautiful reflection on the trip came from him. Quote, "A wonderful time. Things we'd never seen or done. Things we'll probably never see or do again." Jim France, Bill Sr.'s son and current NASCAR CEO, founded Grand Am and championed the 2023 Garage 56 return. His words after Le Mans 2023, quote, "I hope my dad and my brother are somewhere up there looking down and smiling." Competitive measurement registers the 1976 NASCAR at Le Mans experiment as failure, with 2 retirements, 0 classified finishes, and mechanical disasters stemming from fuel miscommunication and inadequate preparation. Here's what the results miss, though. Official ACO framing celebrates, quote, "the mutual Franco-American history during the Revolutionary War and the fascination American competitors have always had with the 24 hours of Le Mans." Exactly what the organizers wanted came from those cars, spectacle, crowd excitement, and transatlantic goodwill. French fans pressing against rumbling stock cars in the main square of Le Mans. Cheers of Les Deux Monstres as V8s thundered past. McGriff blowing past Porsches at 200 miles per hour on the Mulsanne Straight. The mission was accomplished. Evolution continues for the exchange. 2026 brings vintage NASCAR cars back to Circuit de la Sarthe for the 50th anniversary of the original entry. American Thunder NASCAR to Le Mans premiered on Prime Video in June 2025, a documentary chronicling the 18-month journey of the 2023 Garage 56 project with Jeff Gordon as executive producer. What did the day a NASCAR V8 shocked Europe actually prove? And the answer covers several things at once. Astonishing power comes from American pushrod engines, enough to hit 200 miles per hour in a 3,800-pound stock car using technology Europeans dismissed as primitive. Straight-line speed alone doesn't win endurance races because you need brakes, you need a transmission surviving 22 gear changes per lap, and you need fuel matching what your engine was built for. Preparation matters more than raw capability. Years and millions went into Ford's GT40 engineering for endurance, while the 1976 NASCAR teams had weeks and a prayer. Sometimes winning isn't required. Sometimes being big, loud, and unforgettable is enough. The enduring image from 1976 shows those two monsters shaking French countryside with unmuffled V8 thunder. French crowds pressing against the cars in adoration. Herschel McGriff blowing past Porsches at 200 miles per hour before discovering he couldn't stop for the corner. Richard Brooks driving flat out with a lit cigarette in his mouth. Sound, spectacle, and sheer audacity. Neither car finished, and neither car earned official classification. Nearly 50 years later, NASCAR returned to Le Mans with lessons learned, completed the race, and finally proved what the 1976 teams always believed. American stock cars belong on the world stage. Proper preparation just needed to get them there.